What's up everyone, Manny from Motomillion here, and if you can peek through around and see some of the bikes, we have a big surprise. Well, one of the biggest surprises, that 650 EV is back here. First one, let me show you this real quick. This is the R1 60th anniversary. This is a Motomillion project, but not a Motomillion bike. We're doing this bike for a very special client. We'll have more about this bike and some in-depth videos about it. It's not going to be a series like the Motomillion bikes, but we'll still show you the build process. If you could probably tell, it has a World Superbike exhaust and some other pieces, but we'll get back to that later. The biggest surprise that he brought us is this beautiful SP2. We've been waiting for it for a little while, and I think we might have mentioned it a couple times in our other videos. We ordered this, I believe, last November, and this is being filmed on the last day of October right now. So it almost took a year to get it. I want to thank Ducati Detroit, Charlie at Ducati Detroit, for bringing this down to us. And I also want to thank Charlie from Cleveland at Ducati Cleveland, who went and picked this bike up for us to get it to Yves so that Yves can bring it down to us. And we have Yves V4R here. And this is the evolution of what was left from the V4R, I guess. It's not the same engine, but I'm sure Yves can chime in on us and tell us what he thinks of him too, because he's owned this bike for so long. And dare I say, this might be the highest mileage V4R that I've ever heard of.
11,000 miles, more than 11,000 miles this thing. I've had it since 2018. It's a 2019, got it early. It's a fantastic bike. I've loved every single minute of it and all the parts that you put on this bike over the years. From the nickel-plated calipers to all the carbon fiber, the full carbon fiber belly pan that was painted, the carbon fiber subframe, you know, the ThyssenKrupp carbon fiber wheels. It's just so much that was done to this thing. Full Brembo braking system. It's just been a joy to ride, especially since our good buddy Joe, one of Ducati's master techs, has been working on this bike recently, and he has it completely dialed in. But I'm sad to see it go, but I'm happy for its replacement. Yeah. The new V4R with this beautiful wheelbarrow exhaust and the engine modifications they did to it. It's going to be amazing. Yeah,
I can't wait. It's going to be a little bit of wait though, right? March?
Yeah, March.
And until March, this is the crown jewel of Ducati. And there's been some updates. They do look very similar, but there's been some updates over the years. And 22 was the biggest update year that there was. There was an update on 2020, and then the major update was in 22, and this is a 23 model year because it came so late. It's not the first, but it's one of the first in the country. There's a story behind the first one. Maybe we'll mention it to you guys. But we're going to go in depth on what's been changed. But just from a quick glance, you could tell some of the fairings are different, the winglets are different, and the SP2 is their track special. This is their time attack bike, as they call it. And we'll have another video, separate video, on what the major differences are. But we have these two beautiful bikes here together. I can't wait to see Yves V4R. That was like the big news right before this bike arrived. But by no means this is any slouch. They're kind of different bikes anyways. When we go through the in-depth talk about the SP2, we might tell you what some of these differences are for those people who are wondering. This bike over here, I flew out to Detroit to ride this thing. because we were over at Ducati Detroit with Ebe.
Frankly, man, you were not a believer at first in this bike. You were
No.
like, oh, it's just a V4R. I remember that when you flew out to Detroit.
Well, before that, I flew out to New York and we met there. Remember at the motorcycle show?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Manny from Motomillion and my good buddy 650 Ebe here.
What's up, everybody?
We're actually going to check out Ebe's new bike that he just ordered, and that was the first time we saw it. It was the first street bike, I think, that had winglets
Yes,
on it,
it was.
right?
Yep.
So that was so. Now we all want winglets. I was kind of like, oh, it's too extreme for the road, and it was a new concept, but now we all like it. And yes, I wasn't a believer.
And when you rode it for the first time, you just couldn't stop talking about it. I remember that clearly.
Just because, I was trying to figure out what is so different between the regular V4 that I do want a V4R, but this thing is fantastic. And I think Ducati's done a good job on the refresh of it.
Yes.
Because I think the main thing that I realized is the engine. And they went crazy with the engine with the new bike. But it takes nothing away from this, because every time, you could forget about this and just say it's a V4R, but when you ride this bike and when you jump off a regular V4, you notice the red line at 16,005. It's just, there's something different about it, and that's why we like the Ducatis too, right? Because they have so much character that it comes through when you ride it, and you don't have to ride it fast or crazy. It could be just like I like to do, ride it down to the local coffee shop, the typical Ducati rider.
Yes, that's you.
Yeah,
and I like the smackdowns, and this thing is just perfect for smackdowns. Like you mentioned, 16,500 red line is just brutal. It just never stops pulling. People that I let ride this bike, what they do is they get on it and they start short shifting. They shift it like 13, 14,000 because that's what they're used to. And then they're like, wait a minute, this bike was still pulling. I shifted early. And then they're just like wowed off their feet. But yeah.
And the evolution of it was, I think, is one of the main things that I like. It's so far, when we see it, we know what it is, right? But when you put it beside a stock one, or even beside a Superleggera, like you had with your good friend Jim Caviezel, I know he's done some things to his bike, but this stands on its own. And yeah, you had really good memories with it. I even had good memories with it. You brought it down here quite a few times, and
like I said, if I weren't replacing it with the 2023, I would be sad to see it go. This is one of those bikes that you don't remove from your collection, but only to replace it with the updated version.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job with it too.
They did. The colorway. People don't realize the colorway on the 2023, Manny, has all different shades of red in it, right? And even in the tail section.
That comes from the MotoGP team.
Yeah.
So they've done a mix of MotoGP and World Superbike on it, because the V4Rs are the homologation for the World Superbike series.
Yes.
So they build these bikes so that they could take it, have the best base for racing. That's why when you look at this and look at an SP2, they're totally different concepts. And I like that, because I'm a huge fan of MotoGP. I've been watching since I could even remember,
You're my cheat sheet for MotoGP.
Yeah, but
whenever I have a question, I just
colorways.
ask Manny, what's this, what's that, he tells me.
Yeah, but this has been fantastic. Like when I even just look at it, there's something everywhere on it.
Yeah.
And it's aged gracefully too. Because
Absolutely.
11,000 miles.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't have to get rid of this bike, except if you're a maniac like me that just has to have the latest and greatest all the time. But for a regular person, they'd be like, they'd be totally fine with this bike.
Well, more than told people, they'll be happy to. I would be happy to have a V4R. And be it a 2019, 2020, whatever, not the newest one, but this is, because if I could, I would have both, to be honest.
Wow, that would be nice. For
an
ultimate collection, yes.
Yeah, because I think this bike means a lot for Ducati, because before this was the 1199R. And, it was a great bike, but we all know how the Ducatis were back in the day.
Yeah.
I think when they switched to the V4 platform, I don't think you could have done what you've done with this bike with your Panigale 1199R, right?
Not at all.
It's not to take it away from those bikes, but I think it's a totally different concept, and I think it's got to do with the Audi ownership.
I would think so. The quality and everything is strictly there. And
they've been, yes, they're temperamental. They've had their things here and there, but this bike's been pretty bulletproof. Other than some stuff that has come up, but
Yeah, and honestly, those things, they weren't really a fault of the motorcycle. They were more so a fault of not the best technicians working on the bike.
Yeah.
But like I said, once Joe, the master mechanic from Ducati, got his hands on the bike, it's been flawless ever since.
Yeah.
And then other people, like my good buddy 5 Up Motorcycle, Steve, with the Superleggera, he's never had an issue out of that thing.
Yeah,
and he beats on it, runs it. Yeah, he's never had an issue.
The wingless Superleggera.
The wingless one, yes.
The bird and cropped the wings, right?
Yeah. And before that, he had a Speciale. He had a 2018 Speciale, ran it too, like we all do, and didn't have any issues out of that bike either. So I think that what I'm trying to say is when you have one of these beautiful Ducati machines, make sure you have a qualified mechanic work on this bike.
Which is hard to find. You know?
Very.
I deal with it every day. We get phone calls from people, and you know, we're not going to put any names out there, but you know, it's a shame that because these are such high caliber machines, and it's just the age that we live in. I think that the craftsmanship is not there anymore, or the pride of people. But luckily, the ones that are there, they stand out.
They do.
So, you know, they could get compensated well for what they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I know the SP2 is stock, but I would still want to do a back-to-back ride on them.
Absolutely.
I usually never, ever do the first rides without a radiator guard or doing something on the bike. But just because you're here for a short time, I think we really got to go and enjoy it as much as we can in stock form.
Yes.
We have some crazy plans for these bikes. But yeah, so let's just get our gear on and let's take him for a ride because
absolutely,
the day is young, but I know you're not here for a long time, so let's get this done.
Let's do it.
So now we're on the SP2, the first ride. It's got a total of 5 miles, and first impressions, this is not smell-o-vision, but if you ever get a new Ducati and ride it, it's got this sweet smell that I really enjoy. The other thing is, that one thing that I recognize right away is I haven't driven a stock V4 for a while, but I don't remember the stock bike feeling this deep. It's not an exhaust tone, but there is something about it that's different, that sounds a little louder than what it used to be. Beautiful hot Miami weather in October. The other thing I think is this new tank design. You could really feel it. It feels that you're hugging the bike more when you're riding it. And obviously, you know, I see this black paint scheme that's on it, the winter test livery. That's a nice little souvenir when you're riding this SP2. Obviously the bike is brand new, so we're not going to do crazy things on it, but just the sheer sound of it. But also this bike has a dry clutch, but we haven't taken the clutch cover off of it yet. They ship it to you with the regular clutch cover. I don't hear the dry clutch. I kind of miss it because that's an inherent sound of a Ducati for me. Yeah, other than that, it feels like a V4 with the shaky mirrors that I can't see anything out of when I'm riding it because the mirrors shake so much, but we'll take care of all of that stuff. Also, this addition of the span adjuster that's on here, that's pretty cool. Just reminds you of how racetrack derived this bike is, even though it's a street bike. One cool thing is these new gauge cluster layout. So if you put it into race mode, there are 2 race modes, just like I did right now. You'll see that now I have the gear in large format, and I have all my DTC and all the other electronics on the right side of the screen. It seems like the graphics are nicer, but maybe it's just because the graphics are different. There's also, you could also change it around to make it so that you have your rev counter on top. That's if you're tucked in on the track, so you can see that rev counter. Let's put it back into street mode for now. But yeah, the bike feels higher, that's for sure, because they did raise the swing arm pivot point. Even me at 5'11 and a half, 6 foot tall, I'm not flat footing, sort of flat footing on the bike. I still got to set the sag on it to make sure that it's got the right sag, but Other than that, it all looks familiar. These grips are different obviously from the factory, and lack of noise. Maybe a valve or something opens up, because when you rev it, when it's standing still, it's not sounding that throaty as I mentioned before. You see the new winglets too when you're riding it. I don't know if it's because of the load that is on the bike when you're riding it. Even in low RPMs right now, the sound is completely different than when I was trying to rev it. We're gonna go over the beautiful bridge of the Julia Tuttle Causeway. You get a really nice view of Miami from here. The electronic suspension is obviously in street mode. It's really compliant and smooth. But these mirrors, I kind of find them useless. Even on this bumpy bridge, it doesn't feel that bad. The Motomillion Street Fighter has a race Olin suspension on it, and that is definitely a rougher ride than this right now. Look at this beautiful view of Skyline Miami. Just want to bed the brakes in a little bit on this new bike. But yeah, so when you bed the brakes in, you're introducing the new pad material to the new rotor, so it leaves a little coating of that new pad material on your rotors, and that helps it to brake better. And it is a big difference, especially when you get a new bike, or if you get a new rotor or a new pad. When you do this, you'll notice that the bite of the brakes completely change. And if you ever get to ride a new bike, and that, I don't think it's a part of the dealer PDI process, but when you first go on the brakes, you're always surprised that the brakes are not there as much as you want them to be. But once you do that bedding process, it really changes the brake feel. And this is true for any vehicle that has disc brakes. It applies the same thing to the cars. But overall, you know, just a little short ride that I did, this feels, it's like a familiar friend that you've had, you know, your longtime friend that you know so well. Just a few things are different. You know, maybe they changed their style a little bit. They got a haircut, or, you know, they put on some weight or lost some weight. You know, it's not, I'm not saying that bike feels heavier, but you know, that a familiar friend you had is just a little bit different. Maybe it has a new accent. They went to a new country and came back. But one other thing that I really noticed on this bike is the quick shifter. Ducatis did not have the nicest quick shifters, I'll be honest about it, but I think the quick shifter of this feels different, feels much better. That's one of the biggest things that I noticed, especially when you were riding at speed and it just go up and down. It didn't feel as direct. But also these bikes come with the SP2 comes with a different set of rear sets. The pegs are really grippy, and it might be the rear sets that make the quick shifter feel so much better, but there's something tweaked on the quick shifter. I think they did change the mapping, or they did make some tweaks on the quick shifter. That's what Ducati's press release had said it. And I'm going to find out about the seating position once I swap bikes over with Ebe, who is just following me along with his V4R. Even though that bike's modified, you know, the seating position should be fairly familiar. I just feel like, you know, the tank, maybe it's psychological, but the tank feels different. The way you grip it with your knees. could hear his dry clutch going. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull off to a safe area so that we could swap these bikes around. And I gotta remember his bike is a GP shift. And let's see this. And yes, you still can't find the kicking stand. But this is the beautiful SP2 in very stock format. As you can see, you even have the big dreaded fender. But let's jump on the V4R now. Let's take a look at it, see what feels different, and I can report back. There we go. Yeah, I really think that the tank feels different. Obviously, this bike is far from stock. Abe's changed a lot of things over the years, be it the clutch master and the brake master. And also, it is a little bit lowered, so the seating position when you're stopped feels a little bit different. But hallelujah, these mirrors, because I can finally see what's behind me without the dreaded shake of those mirrors. But also, this dry clutch. Let's see how long it takes for me to forget. Now this bike is a GP shift. I gotta reprogram my brain. It's definitely louder, I'll tell you that much. That's so this sounds like the proper Ducati. The engines are not the same, obviously. This being a V4R, it has a 1000cc engine, and the SP2 has the 1103 engine, so they would sound a little different with the same exhaust. But obviously this has the full Acura race exhaust, but when you're stopped, the main thing you hear is that dry clutch. That SP2 definitely needs an exhaust, and you can be sure that we are definitely going to put an exhaust on it sooner than later. There we go. I put it to second. It didn't take long instead of first because I already forgot this is a GP shift. Also, the clip-ons on this thing, it has the Ducati clip-ons, the GP ones, which I really like it because the bike is the bars are wider and makes the bike feel a lot more flickable. You can lean it easier with the counter steer. So this thing is done in 11,922 miles. It goes to say how far these bikes have gone, or how far these bikes have come, that I could be on a special racing derived Ducati, and it's got 11,000 trouble-free miles and it's still running strong. That's a big testament to the reliability of the Ducatis, that, you know, there's an old wives' tale that these things are unreliable, but I wouldn't listen to any of those rumors. Yeah, the quick shifter definitely feels different. Even on this bike that has a flash, and the quick shifter is far better from stock. The SP2 with the updated quick shifter, you could definitely notice the improvement on the quick shifter that they've done, and Ducati has affirmed that. For those viewers, we are in Miami Beach, the city of Miami Beach, and we're going to just cross over to the city of Miami right now. Just the noise alone makes the ride so much more enjoyable. And look at this view, the cruise ships, the beautiful skyline, these crazy expensive houses on the islands, and the beautiful Miami water. These Ducatis feel right at home here. They are that special and they feel that exotic. GP4 MS brakes on this bike feel wonderful too with the master cylinder. I guess we do have to bleed the brakes on that SP2 right there, because the brake feel is not so good. It's all because it's all from the factory and we just received the bike, so we gotta go through it a little thorough. Doesn't want to change into 6. That's what I mean by the quick shifter. You cannot lazy shift with these old, well, not old, but the previous V4R or the V4S or the V4s. The quick shifter is just, I don't know what they did wrong with them, but you got to really remember to not lazy shift. But all in all, guys, this is just a quick little first ride video of talking about the differences between the SP2 that I just received and this beautiful V4R 650 Eves V4R. You can be sure that we're going to be doing a lot more stuff to that SP2, and you can see it on the channel. We are going to have an SP2 specific series, just like our R1M series, that we're going to show you each step of the process with that bike. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And look out for the next episode, guys. We're going to go more in depth about that SP2 and the changes between the previous models and the new models. Until next time, guys, have a good one.